It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Your emails as well at randykabc@gmail.com and search for the KABC News Blitz wherever you get your podcasts. I am fascinated by legislation that comes out of Sacramento that is full of loopholes that end up doing the exact opposite of what you thought the legislation was supposed to do. Specifically, I'm talking about legislation that was passed in the 2023-2024 legislative session to deal with the theft of catalytic converters. Or, Hugo, how do you pronounce it?
Let's criminalize catalytic converters. Let's criminalize copper.
Because there was a bipartisan bill signed by Gavin Newsom that was supposed to crack down on catalytic converter theft. But there's a few problems with it, which is why Fresno City and Fresno County has had to impact their own catalytic converter ordinance because the current law had a massive loophole in it. What was that loophole? Well, let's find out. Here is a piece from CBS 47 in the Central Valley.
Catherine, you can have 8 catalytic converters in your possession, and law enforcement can't do anything because under state law, that is the legal amount.
We passed a law to crack down on catalytic converter theft. And apparently that law was written in a way that if you have 8 catalytic converters on you or less, well, that's not a crime.
Catherine, you can have 8.
I don't know why it would be something that anyone would have more than one catalytic converter on them. The fact that you'd be holding one to begin with is rather suspicious. You also remember that when this was discussed as an ordinance in the LA City Council, Eunice Hernandez famously said, "I don't want to criminalize my communities," by increasing the fines for people being caught with a catalytic converter. But yes, state law that was meant to crack down on catalytic converter theft did the exact opposite.
Catherine, you can have 8 catalytic converters in your possession, and law enforcement can't do anything because under state law, that is the legal amount.
There's a limit. If you have 8, well, there's nothing wrong with that. You must be a legitimate recycler. If you have 9, you must be a thief. What? And as much as we love to decry one-party state nonsense here, this was a bill written by Vince Fong. This is a Republican-led bill, but it doesn't matter. There's incompetence at every level of government in Sacramento.
But under this new county regulation, you could have 1 and be arrested. Sending a message to criminals. Fresno County Supervisor Gary Bredefeld says Tuesday's vote to advance the new catalytic converter ordinance is about eliminating safe havens for thieves.
We live in a state where they enact legislation out of the little legislature that makes...
This guy's great. He's super Central Valley.
We live in a state where they enact legislation out of the little legislature that makes it difficult for us on the county level to make our community safe. So we at the local level have to enact ordinances to deal with the crime.
If passed.
Because the state law made it so you can be caught with 8 catalytic converters, and that's not a crime. There's no legitimate reason for anybody to be walking around with 8 catalytic converters. But no, that's the law that was passed to deal with this problem.
If passed next month.
This is why you have a legislature that passes 1,000 bills every year, and we still have the same problems over and over and over again.
If passed next month, anyone found with the catalytic converter in Fresno County could face a $1,000 fine and possible jail time. Fresno County Sheriff John Zanoni says this would...
By the way, why wasn't that in the state legislation? Why does every single county have to do something like this for something that's so basic? And I think this is one of those things where you have to crack down on both sides. It's not only the people stealing these catalytic converters, but it's the people reselling them. It's the people selling them to these recyclers that are melting them down. Of course, you saw that ring in Sacramento that was busted where they had thousands of these things that they were going to put in trucks and ship to New Jersey.
Fresno County Sheriff John Zanoni says this would give power back to his deputies, who often have to let thieves go, even though they know the converters are stolen.
Remember, this is state law passed less than 2 years ago that was supposed to crack down on the theft of catalytic converters. The bill title was Automobile Dismantlers and Catalytic Converters. And in that bill, we made it a crime if you have more than 8 of them. What the hell?
It has happened. Believe it or not, it has happened. Or they don't have enough number of catalytic converters that our hands are tied as law enforcement. So this will help untie our hands.
Several counties and cities, including the city of Fresno, have already passed similar ordinances. Daryl Tyrell is one of several people responsible for bringing the motion forward. He lives in Riverside County and has made it his goal to get similar restrictions in every county in the state.
We live in just like you, we have a working class community in our city, in our county. We got agriculture, and a lot of times people depend on their cars for their livelihood. So when someone steals someone's catalytic converter, that put them in a bind, because what if their insurance doesn't cover it?
Okay, I want to shout this guy out because this guy is a literal hero. This is a guy who lives in Riverside County who found out about this loophole in state law and has made it his mission to go from city to city, county to county, as far as he can throughout the state, made it all the way out to Fresno from Riverside, because he knows that local municipalities need to have stricter ordinances than this nonsensical loophole in state law where you can be caught with 8 catalytic converters and they can't do a damn thing to you. So we're going to listen to some of the press conference where this guy spoke up. This is the guy that helped push this legislation forward, and he's doing it in all kinds of places where he doesn't live.
Good morning, Honorable Mr. Chair, Honorable Supervisors. My name is Daryl Terrell, a Moreno Valley resident from Riverside County. I want to thank you, Honorable Supervisor Redfield, Honorable Supervisor Pacheco, for moving this proposed ordinance forward. I have traveled to counties like yours from Ventura, Los Angeles, Imperial, San Diego, Santa Barbara.
I'm going to guess he was not taken with a good reception in Los Angeles.
Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, Tulare, Kern County, to advocate for the ordinance that you have before you, what I call the one and you're done ordinance.
But you figured that would be the way to crack down on this, because there's no legitimate reason for anybody to be walking around with a catalytic converter that's not attached to their car.
There's a loophole in state law AB 641 that allows a person, as you said before, your colleagues, that allow a person to steal up to 8 catalytic converters and nothing will happen to them. I mean, what kind of nonsense is that? So what we did in Riverside County and San Bernardino County, I went before my Honorable Board of Supervisors in Riverside County 3 times to advocate for a one and done ordinance, and we finally passed it. All 28 cities in my county are on the same page.
Look at this guy. That's incredible. This is how you make local government work. You take a very common sense issue that nobody would disagree with unless they're on the side of criminals.
Let's criminalize catalytic converters. Let's criminalize copper.
And at the local level, they have to fix what Sacramento couldn't, which is this nonsensical loophole where you could be caught with 8 catalytic converters, and that's not a crime. But of course, it's not the only loophole that is in the state of California. In fact, there's a much more dangerous loophole linked to recent legislation that is being taken advantage of by the criminal element and defense attorneys. And that, of course, is the California mental health diversion loophole. And it had deadly consequences this week in Sacramento. For more, here is CBS Sacramento.
A deadly stabbing in Fair Oaks, with the Sacramento sheriff saying the suspect should have never been on the streets to begin with.
This all happened on Fair Oaks Boulevard in Fair Oaks.
Your reporter covering Sacramento County, Tori Apodaca, joins us now live from the sheriff's office with what she's learning on this. Tori.
Good evening, Marley and Tony. The Sacramento County Sheriff's Office here says that a fight in a Fair Oaks parking lot led to the deadly stabbing of 40-year-old Carlos Romero. Well, that stabbing suspect was out of jail after being priorly convicted of 2 violent crimes. We're getting answers.
Wait, why? So someone was convicted of 2 violent crimes. How could he be out? Well, it's California. You're going to find out how he got out.
We're getting answers. Why? Flashing lights at the scene of a fatal stabbing in Fair Oaks.
This was completely preventable. He should have never been out of jail to begin with.
The Sacramento County Sheriff's Office laid out the 25-year-old suspect, Jordan Murray's, criminal history, saying he was convicted for robbing and spraying employees with chemicals twice.
So he's a violent pepper spraying robber. Okay, that's the original crime. So what happened when he was finally arrested for violent robberies where he was pepper spraying? I'm assuming that's the chemicals. If it's some other deadly chemical, who knows?
Back in May and June of 2024. Then, in November 2024, he was released from prison under the Mental Health Diversion Program.
This is another new legislation that sounds great. Well, if someone is suffering from a mental illness, we can divert them into the treatment that they need so we're not putting mentally ill people in our prisons and jails. Oh, but just you wait. Turns out the way you qualify for this program is in a way that anyone can qualify for this program.
Under the Mental Health Diversion Program. And now, May 2025, Murray arrested for the murder of 40-year-old Carlos Romero.
So let's recap so far. Somebody is committing violent robberies, gets arrested, gets charged, goes through a mental health diversion program, gets released, and is immediately free to murder somebody on the streets in Fair Oaks.
He's released out into the public with basically a list of tasks that he's got to accomplish as far as getting therapy.
For a court to grant someone a mental health diversion, criminals do not have to prove that their mental illness is related to the crime.
With all of the complicated verbiage that goes into these laws, they are full of unintentional or maybe even intentional loopholes. So this guy can claim any mental illness as the reason why he committed violent robberies, and instead of going to prison for being a violent felon, we can divert him to therapy? Turns out the therapy didn't work now, did it?
Criminals do not have to prove that their mental illness is related to the crime. They can blame any crime on any one of these hundreds of listed mental health disorders, including ADHD, erectile disorder, bulimia, anorexia.
You can't make this up. Only in the state of California can you claim as a defense for a violent crime that I've got erectile dysfunction, and that's why I committed the crime, and I need a mental health diversion program to deal with that. And we say yes. This is what goes on in Sacramento, and because they pass 1,000 bills every single year, so many of them slip right under the radar. There's just no possible way to cover every single bill that is written and passed in the state. There is just too much, and sometimes you don't even hear about one of these things till there's already devastating, deadly consequences. As we know now, as somebody got murdered by the guy that got out on mental health diversion.
Including ADHD, erectile disorder, bulimia, anorexia.
I would love to see that defense.
Only people charged with murder or sex crimes cannot be eligible for mental health diversions.
But any of the other crimes, well, you can claim that it was your mental illness, even if it had nothing to do with it, even if you're making up the mental illness. By the way, ED is a mental illness? That's news to me.
So that means if the stabbing victim had survived, the suspect Murray could have been out again on mental health diversion.
Yeah, 100%.
Is there any kind of supervision for people that are released under mental health diversion?
People in mental health diversion have to go in at the beginning. They go in every week to see the judge. They are often in inpatient treatment. Sometimes it's intensive outpatient treatment.
Rabbi Seth Castleman.
So they get to show up for therapy. Wonderful.
Rabbi Seth Castleman is the founding director of Exodus Project, a local group that helps reintegrate thousands of incarcerated people into society every year.
The statistics show that the likelihood of a graduate of the mental health diversion program are 55% less likely to commit a violent crime than people sent away to prison or jail.
Yeah, but how about the people taking advantage of it like this violent monster? What is that? Does that add to your statistics?
But they aren't all success stories. The violent stabbing playing out in this young man's work parking lot.
I don't know. You should have been watched the surveillance a little longer. Had someone with them.
The suspect that was on track to get reintegrated back into society. Now,
how'd that work out?
Now back behind bars for murder. Now, Sheriff Jim Cooper here did take to X this morning, calling the mental health diversion program a get-out-of-jail-free card. He did testify at the Assembly Public Safety Committee last month to try and bring changes to this law, but that bill was shot down.
And this was, by the way, at the exact same time that there was all of the shock and awe and completely legitimate outrage over what the Public Safety Committee was doing on the bill that was supposed to add the automatic felony to people purchasing 16 or 17-year-olds for sex. That one got a lot of attention, as it should have, and because people were paying attention, something changed up there. Well, at the exact same time that the Public Safety Committee and Nick Schultz was killing that bill, they also killed a bill that was being championed by Sacramento County Sheriff Jim Cooper, who used to be in the legislature, that would have cut out some of these loopholes in the mental health diversion law, where you can claim you have ADHD and you don't have to be held responsible for your criminal acts as long as you didn't kill somebody. Oh, buckle up, everyone. We're just getting started, as I'm sure you've never even heard about this before, but we're going to take a deep dive into California's mental health diversion program and all the ways criminals know now that they can exploit it. 800-222-KABC is the phone number, 1-800-222-5222. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. Hey, if you've ever missed an episode of the show, which, maybe you're not in the car at 5 o'clock every single day. Maybe you got to a place where the signal cut out. You got out of the car to go shopping. Every episode that we do is available on podcast, and there's several different ways to get the show. You can go to kabc.com/newsblitz. You can search for the KABC News Blitz on your favorite apps like Apple Podcasts, iHeart, or Spotify. Even easier than that, I don't know about you, but the app that I use for everything and anything, including all my show prep, is YouTube. If you just search on YouTube for the KABC News Blitz, every single episode gets posted there as a video. I mean, it's just a picture of me, the title of the episode, and squiggly audio lines, but it's there on YouTube. All 253 hours that we've done of this show since it launched last January. So maybe you'd like to share some of these with your friends. Take the link, copy and paste it. Tell them the story we did yesterday on the homeless fire breaking out at the LA 2028 Olympics venue site. The story we did on Monday, where did that $100 million from fire aid go? The story we did last week of Gavin Newsom committing $1 billion a year for high-speed rail for the next 20 years. Share these with your friends. Share these with your family. Let's grow this show. Let's make it even bigger. Thank you so much. And as a thank you for listening to this show, for calling in and emailing, have I got a gift for you. 790 KABC welcomes the Psychedelic Furs at the Greek Theater on September 22nd. Tickets are on sale Friday at Ticketmaster.com. But right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-790-5222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by Live Nation. Good luck dialing. When we come back, we're taking a deep dive into all of the loopholes in California's mental health diversion law, which says if you get arrested for a crime that's not murder, you can claim mental illness and you don't have to go to prison. We're going to tell you all about that next. Keep it right here. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC. 1-800-222-5222. Your emails as well at randykabc@gmail.com, and search for the KABC News Blitz wherever you get your podcasts. So we just played you the story of the awful murder that happened in Fair Oaks, committed by somebody who was out of prison after 2 violent robberies because of a mental health diversion program. When I saw that story, it reminded me that back in February, I had saved a story from ABC7 in the Bay Area that did a deep dive on this topic, but we just sometimes never get to all the stuff that I download. If you knew all of the stories that I download for not just this show, but for the John Phillips Show that we never get to because there's only 3 hours for that show, there's only 1 hour for this show, and we like to take a lot of phone calls. I file everything away, though, just in case I need it, especially when it's a great deep dive piece on a topic like this. And Leanne Melendez is one of those great reporters up at ABC7 in the Bay Area, and she'll tell you exactly the kind of loopholes that are being taken advantage of constantly by the criminal element in order to get out of prison, because now you can just say you have a mental illness, and as long as you didn't kill anybody, well, therapy, that'll do it. For more on the California mental health diversion law that you probably never heard about before today, here is ABC7 in the Bay Area.
Across the Bay Area, you've likely seen people living on the street struggling with mental health issues. Today, we're going to focus on something that's aiming to prevent that. It's called mental health diversion.
Yeah. I'm sure that's how it was sold, but it has nothing to do with that.
Essentially, treatment is available for people with a mental illness who have committed a crime. It's relatively new, so it's still too early to tell how well it's working.
Yeah, ABC7 News building a Better Bay Area reporter Leanne Melendez is here now with the pros and cons of this program.
So this is law in California. It's been on the books since 2022. Now, programs that get some...
It's amazing. There are so many laws in this state every year, it's impossible to keep track of all of them. And so this one's been on the books for years, and we're just finding out about some of its devastating effects now. And because of term limits, it's very possible whoever wrote this thing isn't even in office anymore.
So this is law in California. It's been on the books since 2022. Now, programs that get someone into the right treatment are not new, but it used to be that the person's attorney had to argue and argue and argue that there was a connection between the crime committed and the mental disorder.
Yeah, I mean, that's how you would assume. If you're going to plead guilty for the reason of insanity, it is the burden of your attorney to prove that you're insane or that your mental illness caused you to commit the crime. And I'm sure there are legitimate uses for this. You know, if you're hearing voices in your head, if you've got schizophrenia and the demons told you to do something, well, yeah, maybe we need to have you in a locked facility, except we don't really have those in the state of California. But that's how it used to work. So what did this law do? Well, it stopped the lawyers from having to prove that or to even argue that. We just get to take your word for it that you have a mental illness, and any mental illness will do.
Now, it's the other way around. The prosecutor, meaning the DA, has to say to the judge, hold on a minute, judge. No. The crime has nothing to do with this person's mental disorder. So...
And we know how receptive judges are to district attorneys, as evidenced by San Francisco's Brooke Jenkins trying to get illegal alien drug dealers from Honduras put away, and they say they're a victim of human trafficking. And then they get off.
What are we seeing? For better or for worse, more cases are being submitted.
The Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing estimates that more than half of the city's unhoused population suffers from some kind of mental illness.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Some can be easily identified just by walking around parts of San Francisco. You've seen them. A few end up committing crimes because of their mental disorder. So here's what happens next.
Rather than punish them by sending them to jail or prison, Menlo Park State Senator Josh Becker came up with SB 1223.
The reason it was done is because we've been warehousing mentally ill people in our jails, and our jails are not equipped to give them any kind of mental health treatment.
I love when they say that, but you know what's the unfortunate truth? while it is definitely true that LA County Men's Central Jail is the largest mental health facility in the nation, it also is the only place that has the kind of infrastructure that we have. We should have a bigger facility. Should have something better. But this goes all the way back to something that almost nobody talks about, although I will give credit to it. Steve Hilton has been talking about this, and I don't remember the exact statute, but there was a law passed federally in the late 90s that made it so you could not get reimbursement for Medicare dollars if you had a mental health facility with more than 16 beds, because we didn't want to go back to the awful days of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and these giant mental hospitals. That has been a disaster. We cannot build just infinite facilities with 16 beds. It's just not feasible. So we don't build them at all. And what we've done is turn the jails into a mental health system. So while, yes, what he's saying is true, we shouldn't be warehousing these people there. This is the only place where you can warehouse them, is the jails. This was all stuff that we did to ourselves. And by the way, something that I learned from Steve Hilton talking about this issue is that in the first Trump administration, they offered a waiver to that program, and the state of California did not take them up. The state of California apparently could have signed a waiver and started building or retrofitting actual hospitals to house a whole bunch of mentally ill people, and we didn't do that.
And our jails are not equipped to give them any kind of mental health treatment, really, and mental health rehabilitation.
Of course, what we're doing in LA County is we want to depopulate Men's Central Jail, send all these people out into the community where community people really have no way to deal with this problem.
Attorney Neil Hallinan is currently petitioning for mental health diversion for 6 of his clients.
You've been doing the work for a long time. It gets easier to identify who has diagnosable mental issues. I mean, not that I'm qualified to diagnose it, but you can tell when something's going on.
So who would be eligible for mental health diversion? The courts typically use this book called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders.
Oh, I have one on my bookshelf.
Typically known as DSM. Now, you would expect to find, of course, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, PTSD, but also included is substance use disorder.
Okay, so now that we've decided that substance use disorder is a mental illness in the DSM, it doesn't matter what you did. If you did it because you're addicted to fentanyl or meth, well, then you get diversion. Maybe that diversion could be to a treatment bed to get you off the fentanyl or meth, but Gavin Newsom didn't want to fund that in Prop 36, now did he?
But also included is substance use disorder.
Addiction is a condition in which the person is literally unable to say no.
To clarify, the medical community recognizes addiction as an illness rather than the result of bad judgment.
So unless you murder somebody, any other crime that you did, or I guess sex crime, so whether it's murder or rape, off the table, but anything below that, you can say, well, my addiction made me do it. No jail time for you, no prison time for you. You're getting mental health diversion, which, because we do not have mental health facilities, could mean something as little as therapy.
But San Francisco...
And I'm not knocking therapy, but that's not going to solve a lot of what's going on out here.
But San Francisco's district attorney believes some people are using an addiction diagnosis as a get-out-of-jail-free card because a person's felony charge goes away after the person completes a treatment program that could take up to 2 years.
We are now seeing people who simply have a drug addiction be able to use that as the conduit to entry into mental health diversion for committing crimes that have nothing to do with their substance abuse.
They're just using it. You can just say, well, I'm addicted. It doesn't matter what you did. You robbed a bank. I'm addicted to meth. Okay, therapy for you. No prison time. We're just getting started here because wait till you find out the other mental health afflictions that you can claim that you have to get out of jail, to get out of prison in the state of California, where we have created even more loopholes to make sure that nobody goes to prison. It's the News Blitz with Reddy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. We're going through some of the loopholes in California laws that you might not be familiar with, including a law that was supposed to crack down on catalytic converter theft that says if you're caught with less than 8 of them, it's not a crime. And of course, all of the ways that criminals can take advantage of California's new mental health diversion law, where if you commit a crime that's less than a murder or a rape, you can say you have a mental illness and no jail time for you. Let's go back to this report from ABC 7 in the Bay Area.
Many disorders listed in the DSM can make a person eligible for diversion, even ADHD.
ADHD. Attention Hyperactivity Deficit Disorder. I'm sure I got that wrong. A lot of people have ADHD. ADHD makes you a little distracted from time to time. How that exactly can be used as a defense to get you out of what crime you committed. Let's say you committed a robbery. Well, I thought I was going into my house and I got distracted and I went into your house and held you up at gunpoint. But this is what we've done. We have decided that any mental illness can qualify if it's in the DSM. So you can have ADHD and you can petition the court. You don't even have to petition. You don't have to prove that it had anything to do with your case. The district attorney has to have the burden of proof to prove that your ADHD didn't have anything to do with the case. And even then, the judges, who are either elected by people who don't do enough reading or are appointed by people like Gavin Newsom, are saying, yes, your ADHD is the reason you robbed somebody, and your ADHD is the reason you're going to get mental health treatment instead. I'm not making this up. I couldn't if I tried. The best writers in the world could not make up the insanity that goes on in California. We'll hear more about the mental health diversion loopholes created by Sacramento next. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. Let's go back to the mental health diversion loopholes that the state of California has created, where you can say you have a mental illness and no jail time for you.
So ADHD. So explain a potential nexus between ADHD and criminal behavior.
It's not unfathomable that you can have someone who's had ADHD, maybe it's an extreme form, maybe it's never been treated, and the person has all sorts of particular impulses that they never learned how to control.
Wow. That is a stretch. That is such a stretch that it has pulled a muscle. Let's go to Dale in Long Beach. Dale, hello.
I can't believe this.
It's real. This is something we didn't vote on, but Sacramento voted on, and it's been law for 3 years now.
Now, some outrageous legislation has been coming out of there, like the conjugal visits for prisoners serving life sentences. You know, I looked up who promoted that. It came out of San Francisco, Women's Foundation of California. Here's another one, Prison Law Office. Guess what? You know what the Prison Law Office is? In San Quentin Penitentiary. They're the one that promoted this law.
And you know what's happening now? Gavin Newsom's going to spend state dollars to transform San Quentin into a modern facility where the inmates at San Quentin are going to have their own podcast studio.
How much is that going to cost the taxpayers?
Oh, it doesn't matter at any point. The numbers are astronomical. Dale, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate it. Once again, you can't make up these stories.
The only people excluded from pursuing mental health diversion are those who committed a murder or rape. Brooke Jenkins says she's seen a spike in the number of attorneys pursuing mental health diversion for their clients.
Well, of course, it's an easy way to get your client off, and that's your job as a defense attorney.
Even in a recent case of child abuse. Last September, a 22-year-old man was charged with severely beating this 4-year-old with a belt. So badly, we can only show you these 2 evidence photos to illustrate the harm inflicted. Jenkins and her team argued against mental health diversion. Still, behavioral health services evaluated the man and found that he met the diagnostic criteria necessary for participation in mental health diversion because he was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and adjustment disorder.
Adjustment disorder? Okay, so you beat your kid to a point where they can't even show you the photos on television, but, I had PTSD, so I can't be held responsible for my actions. Okay.
The judge in the case, Michael Beggart, approved the treatment. Here's what the public defender's office had to say about the program. Quote, the courts continued to take extreme caution, time, and effort to make weighted and careful decisions about what is going to be the most effective route to promote public safety.
I don't know how we untangle this web, but this is this kind of stuff that gets put into law every single year, and we only find out about it when there's disastrous consequences. Welcome to California, everybody. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC.